It was a quiet night on Earth. The sky stretched wide and calm, sprinkled with stars that twinkled like distant fireflies. Cities were asleep, towns were silent, and the world felt safe as if nothing could ever hurt them. Children slept in their beds, dreaming of school, of games, of birthdays yet to come. Families whispered good nights, hugged each other tightly, and turned off their lights, unaware that this night would change everything. Then, without warning, the sky tore open. Massive shapes blotted out the stars, and the ground trembled as if the planet itself was screaming. People looked up and froze. They had never seen anything like it, ships taller than mountains, moving with precision and speed that no human mind could understand. From them, bright beams of light shot down, scanning cities, towns, and villages. Panic erupted instantly. Dogs barked frantically, car alarms screamed, and humans ran in every direction. The aliens came fast, colder than winter. They moved with strange, insect-like grace. Their faces, or what passed for faces, were expressionless. Their eyes glowed with a cruel light. In moments, their weapons struck energy beams that could cut through steel plasma nets that could lift a car like it weighed nothing. Humans fought, but their weapons barely scratched the invaders. Tanks exploded, fighter jets went up in flames, and the sky above became a hellish storm of light and fire. And then the children began to disappear. They vanished from their homes, from playgrounds, from the streets. Parents screamed, tried to grab them, but it was no use. The aliens didn't care. Children were beamed into the massive ships with a cold precision, as if herding sheep. Mothers and fathers clawed at the beams, screaming for their children, begging, pleading, crying until their voices were raw and broken. Some went mad. Others collapsed, clutching the empty beds where their bobbies had been. The world turned into chaos. Fear wrapped itself around every human heart like a thick, suffocating blanket. Among the chaos, one boy refused to give in to fear. Eli was 12, small for his age, but with a spirit that burned brighter than the stars above. He had been holding his little sister, Myra, close as the beams scanned their street. He could feel the terror in her tiny hands, the trembling in her small body, and his heart shattered. He knew, deep down, that if he let go, she would be gone forever, and he would never forgive himself. When the alien beam hit their yard, Eli didn't run. He clenched his fists, gritted his teeth, and pulled Myra close. The light lifted them, and everything went white. He could feel the cold metal of the ship brushing against his skin. His ears rang with the hum of alien engines, a sound that felt alive, threatening, and endless. The world below disappeared. Inside the ship, everything was strange and terrifying. The walls were metallic, smooth, and cold. The air smelled of something sharp, almost like electricity and metal mixed together. Hundreds of children from all over Earth were gathered in a massive hall. Some cried, some trembled silently, and some stared blankly, frozen in shock. Eli looked around and saw faces from countries he had never visited. The languages were different, but the fear was the same. Even though the aliens were around them, moving like shadows, Eli's thoughts were only on Myra. She squeezed his hand, her small eyes wide and afraid. He whispered, though he doubted the aliens understood anything, "I won't let them take you. I promise I won't let them." Myra blinked at him, and a small shiver of hope seemed to pass through her. The aliens didn't speak in words humans could understand. Their clicks and hisses filled the air, a language that was sharp, precise, and commanding. They herded the children like cattle, their movements efficient, terrifyingly so. Eli realized something important. They were strong, smarter than humans in every way, and yet they didn't understand the one thing humans had: heart. Humans fought for love, for hope, for family. And Eli felt that heart pounding inside him stronger than fear. As the first night on the alien ship stretched on, Eli lay awake beside Myra. He could hear the quiet sobs of children around him, the rhythmic hum of the ship, and the soft thump of his own heartbeat. He didn't know how, he didn't know when, but a plan began to form in his mind. They had taken children. They had underestimated humans. They had never met someone like him. And Eli promised himself something that night. He would not be afraid. He would fight. He would protect his sister. And he would show these invaders that even in the darkest moments, even in the coldest, most terrifying place, the human heart could burn brighter than any alien weapon. The night was long. The stars were gone, but hope, fragile and fierce, glimmered in the eyes of one small boy who refused to give up. When Eli opened his eyes again, he was no longer on Earth. The world he had known, the warm smell of grass, the soft sounds of birds, the familiar hum of human life was gone. He was inside a place that felt alive but cold and unwelcoming. The walls were tall and smooth, shining with a gray metal he had never seen. The floor was cold beneath his hands, and the air smelled sharp like electricity and iron. Light moved strangely here, flickering in patterns he could not understand. He realized with a sinking feeling that they were inside one of the alien ships. All around him, children huddled in small groups. Some clung to each other, rocking back and forth as if their own fear could make them invisible. Others stared blankly at the walls, trying to memorize every corner, every shadow, as if by knowing it they might find a way out. Eli saw children from different countries, with different skin, different hair, and different languages, but all shared the same look, helplessness. He felt a lump in his throat. Earth's children, his friends, classmates, even strangers, were all trapped here. The aliens, tall and insect-like, moved with eerie precision. Their bodies glimmered under the cold light, and their faces, or what humans could call faces, were rigid and unreadable. Their clicks and hisses echoed around the hall. Every movement was calculated, every glance controlled. To Eli, it felt like the aliens were not just guarding the children. They were studying them, testing them, learning from them. And yet they did not notice the spark in Eli's eyes. Eli tightened his grip on Myra's hand. She trembled beside him, hiding behind his shoulder. "It's okay," he whispered, even though he felt anything but, "I'm here, I won't let them hurt you." Myra looked up at him, her small lips quivering, and nodded. She believed him, and that belief, fragile and beautiful, gave Eli strength. Hours passed, days passed. Eli could not tell. The ship moved, but there were no windows, no sky, no sense of time. The aliens fed the children strange food placed in metal trays and herded them to sleep in rooms that smelled like cold metal and fear. Some children refused to eat. Some refused to sleep. All of them whispered about home, about parents, about Earth. Eli observed the aliens carefully. He noticed patterns in their movements. They clicked in a rhythm, paused at certain corners, avoided some areas, and always returned to the same hall where the children were kept. The more he watched, the more he understood something important. These creatures were smart, yes, but they were predictable. They had rules, and rules could be broken. At first, Eli was terrified to even think about fighting. The aliens were huge, their weapons deadly. One glance from their glowing eyes could freeze a child with fear. But then he remembered Myra's laugh, her tiny hand in his, the way she had fallen asleep trusting him to protect her. He realized that fear was natural, but courage was stronger. Courage was what made humans different. Courage was what made them fight even when the odds were impossible. That night when the lights dimmed and the aliens left the hall, Eli whispered to Myra, "We have to survive. We can't give up. We need to learn everything, how they move, what they do, what they fear. Then we can fight." Myra nodded, shivering but listening. Eli felt a strange warmth inside him. The plan was impossible, but it was the only plan they had. Eli spent every waking hour observing, noting the aliens' patterns, memorizing paths, listening to the clicks and hisses. He found small ways to help other children, moving them quietly from dangerous corners, offering food, calming those who cried. Slowly, others began to look at him differently. Fear turned into hope. A whisper spread. Maybe there was a way out. Maybe someone could fight back. But the ship was relentless. Every day, the aliens tested the children. They used fear as a weapon, separating groups, punishing small mistakes, and showing their power in ways that made hearts ache. Eli saw children break, some refusing to speak, some refusing to move. And every time he pulled Myra close and whispered, "We won't break, not us. We're stronger than this." In the cold, alien night, Eli realized something powerful. They could take their bodies, their freedom, even their voices, but they could never take their human spirit. That spirit burned bright in his chest, a fire that could not be snuffed out. And if he could keep that fire alive in himself, maybe he could ignite it in others. As he lay awake, listening to the hum of the ship, Eli made a silent promise. He would learn, he would grow, and he would fight. No matter what. The aliens had taken Earth's children. They thought they were weak, but they had never met Eli. They had never met a human heart that refused to surrender. And for the first time, Eli allowed himself to imagine something impossible, a future where they could escape, a future where the children could return home, a future where they could win. Days inside the alien ship passed like endless shadows. Eli had watched, learned, and waited. Every movement of the alien guards, every click and hiss was etched into his mind. He studied the way they moved in pairs, how they never looked behind them, and how their glowing eyes missed small corners of the hall. Every day he whispered to Myra, "We will find a way, we will fight, and we will win." The other children watched him quietly. Some were too afraid to speak. Some had already given up hope. But a few, the braver ones, began to peek at Eli as if searching for courage in his small, determined frame. Eli realized that fear could be contagious, but so could hope. It happened one afternoon. The children were being herded into the ship's central hall. Eli noticed a guard lingered, slightly distracted, clicking softly to itself. It was the moment he had been waiting for. He glanced at Myra. "Stay behind me," he whispered. She nodded, clutching his sleeve. Eli's heart pounded as he picked up a piece of broken metal lying nearby, a shard ripped from the floor when the aliens had rearranged the hall. It was small, not much bigger than a pencil, but in his hands it felt heavy with purpose. He had never hurt anyone before, but he realized something vital. Sometimes, to protect the ones you love, you had to fight. The guard moved closer. Eli tightened his grip, counting silently, 1, 2, 3, and then with a scream of pure will, he swung. The metal shard hit the alien's leg, striking a weak joint he had noticed while observing. The guard staggered, then fell with a strange, clicking cry. The hall went silent. Every child froze. Myra's eyes were wide with shock, but then something incredible happened. A ripple of hope spread across the children. Eli had done what none of them dared to imagine. He had fought back, and he had won. Other guards noticed the commotion immediately, hissing sharply and clicking orders that the children could not understand. But Eli moved fast, pulling Myra behind a metal column. He whispered, "We can do this. We have to keep trying." A small group of children followed him, gathering courage from the sight of the fallen alien. They began looking for anything they could use as weapons. Broken metal, pipes, even pieces of alien equipment. They grabbed whatever they could find. Eli realized that the children themselves were becoming a force. Fear was still there, yes, but it was being replaced by determination. The aliens were shocked. They had never seen humans fight like this, especially not children. Their clicks became faster, louder, more chaotic. They tried to regroup, but every time they approached, Eli's eyes were ready. He blocked a narrow hallway with a heavy pipe, swung shards of metal, and used his small size to his advantage, darting through shadows the aliens could not reach. Myra stayed close, gathering courage herself. She swung a piece of metal at one alien when it came too close, and though she barely touched it, she screamed like a warrior. Eli saw her bravery, and a fierce pride rose inside him. These were his people, Earth's children, and together they were stronger than the aliens expected. Eli knew this fight was only the beginning. They were still trapped inside the ship, still surrounded by enemies far stronger than any human. But something had changed. The aliens now feared them, and the children now believed they could fight. By the time the day ended, the hall was littered with sparks and broken metal. The aliens had retreated temporarily, clicking and hissing in anger. The children gathered around Eli, whispering, asking how he had done it. Eli simply smiled, brushing dirt from his clothes, and said, "We just have to try. That's all. Never stop trying." That night, as they huddled together for sleep, the children whispered about what had happened. They no longer spoke only of fear. They spoke of plans, of courage, of hope. Eli held Myra close, thinking about Earth, about their parents, about the life they had lost and might yet reclaim. He realized that fighting was not just about winning battles. It was about keeping the human spirit alive, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. Eli's body ached, and his hands were cut from the shards, but his heart felt unstoppable. He had discovered something vital. Strength is not measured by size or age. It is measured by the courage to stand when everyone else trembles. And for the first time since they had been taken, he felt a small, powerful surge of something that the aliens could never understand. Hope. He looked at the children around him, at their wide, scared but now determined eyes, and whispered softly, "They may be stronger than us. They may have taken our homes, but they can never take our hearts. Not if we fight, not if we stay together." And for the first time, Eli believed it. After the first fight, something changed inside the alien ship. The children were no longer just victims. They were beginning to see themselves as something stronger, fighters, survivors, and maybe even heroes. But Eli knew that courage alone was not enough. If they wanted to survive, they had to understand their enemy. They had to learn the aliens, every movement, every weakness, every rule. Eli woke before dawn. Myra was still asleep beside him, her small hand tucked into his. He touched her head gently, whispered a soft, "We can do this," and slipped into the shadows. The ship was quiet but alive. The hum of alien engines vibrated through the walls and floor, a constant reminder of the strange, dangerous world they were trapped in. Eli moved silently, watching the aliens as they patrolled the corridors. He noticed things that no adult had seen. The aliens always moved in pairs. They communicated with sharp clicks, but always in a pattern, as if rehearsed. They were strong, yes, but their movements were predictable. They had routines, certain doors they never checked, corners they ignored, even moments when they paused to rest. Each observation was a secret weapon. Each small discovery made Eli's heart beat faster, not with fear, but with determination. Eli returned to the hall and whispered to the older children who had started to trust him. "We need to watch them, learn them, every click, every step. They are smart, but they are not perfect, and if we know them, we can fight them better next time." The children nodded, some still trembling, some already itching to try. Slowly, a plan was forming, a plan not just to survive, but to strike back. Days passed like this. Eli turned observation into a game. He taught the children to move quietly, to count the aliens' steps, to notice patterns. They hid in shadows, crouched behind metal panels, scribbled secret maps with anything they could find. Fear was still there, it never left, but it became sharper, focused. It was no longer just fear for themselves. It was fear turned into knowledge, into preparation, into purpose. One day, Eli discovered something amazing. The aliens' weapons, as deadly as they were, had a weak spot. The glowing energy cores could be disrupted with careful strikes. The children gasped when Eli showed them the small piece of metal he had used to hit one alien before. "It is not much," he said, "but if we use it the right way, it can hurt them." Some children smiled, wide and bright, for the first time in days. Others trembled, unsure if it was hope or madness, but they listened. Myra stayed close to Eli, learning quietly, her small hands practicing how to swing and block. She asked questions, and Eli answered patiently, even though he was learning too. "We have to fight smart," he said. "We can't win by just charging. We have to think like them. We have to outsmart them." The aliens began noticing the children were no longer completely helpless. A patrol would find a tray of food mysteriously tipped over, or a corridor blocked, or one of their small devices damaged. They hissed angrily, clicking louder, moving faster, but Eli had already predicted it. Every disruption was carefully calculated to avoid detection while still teaching the children they could make a difference. Each night, Eli gathered the children and whispered plans, lessons, and encouragement. "We are learning their language in our own way. Their clicks, their patterns, their weaknesses, they are all things we can use. Every day we watch, we get stronger. Every day we learn, we get closer to freedom." The children listened, wide-eyed and nervous, but slowly their fear was turning into courage. But Eli also knew this. Learning alone was not enough. They had to trust each other, care for each other, protect each other. The aliens thrived on fear, confusion, and isolation. If the children stayed divided, they would lose before they even tried. So Eli made sure Myra and the other children felt safe, felt seen, felt important. He whispered to them in the darkest nights, "We are stronger together. Even the smallest among us can make a difference. We are humans. That is our power." And slowly, in the cold, metallic halls of the hive, something remarkable happened. The children began to move quietly on their own, observing the aliens, sharing discoveries, helping each other hide and learn. The aliens had captured their bodies, but they had not captured their hearts. They had not captured the human spirit. Eli looked at the group one night as they huddled together in a corner. Myra leaned against him, rubbing sleep from her eyes. The older children were whispering strategies, sharing observations. He realized something amazing. They were no longer just victims. They were a team. A small, frightened but fierce team. And with knowledge, with courage, and with unity, they had a chance. Eli clenched his fists. He felt the fire in his chest grow brighter. He knew the fight was coming soon, the real fight. But for the first time, he was ready. They had learned the enemy, and once you understand your enemy, you can do the impossible. The day of the escape began quietly, though Eli's heart thundered like a drum. He had watched, learned, and planned for this moment for weeks. The hive, the alien ship that had stolen Earth's children, was enormous and terrifying, but it was not perfect. Every patrol had a pattern. Every door had a weakness. Every corner held a chance. And Eli, small, fierce, and determined, had memorized them all. Myra clung to his hand, trembling slightly. "Are you sure, Eli?" she whispered. Her voice was tiny but full of trust. Eli looked at her, saw the hope in her wide eyes, and nodded. "We have to. We have no choice. We fight now or we lose everything." The children moved silently behind him, each clutching whatever they could find, metal shards, broken pipes, even alien trays. They had practiced in secret, learned to duck, hide, and strike if necessary. They were ready, not perfect, but ready. The first challenge was the patrols. Two guards moved down the hallway, their glowing eyes scanning for any movement. Eli signaled to the children, crouched low, and they slid behind the shadows of metal columns. One child froze, fear paralyzing him, and Eli grabbed his sleeve, whispering urgently, "Move, now, don't stop." They slipped past just as the aliens' heads turned, too slow to catch them. As they reached the central corridor, Eli could see the core of the ship, a massive chamber filled with glowing engines and humming machinery. This was the heart of the hive, the source of its power and the key to their escape. He took a deep breath. "We disrupt the engines," he whispered. "We force the ship off course. That's our only chance." The children nodded, fear mixed with determination. They moved like shadows, stepping over debris and broken metal, their hearts pounding in unison. Every step was dangerous. Every corner might hide an alien. Every second mattered. Suddenly, a loud click echoed behind them. A patrol had noticed movement. Aliens rushed forward, hissing, clicking commands too fast for humans to understand. The children panicked for a moment, but Eli's voice cut through the chaos. "Hold the line, don't run, we can do this." He swung a piece of broken metal at one alien, striking its leg joint just as he had observed weeks before. It fell, clicking angrily. Other children followed, throwing objects, blocking paths, creating chaos. The aliens were strong, but they had never fought children like this before. Fear and surprise slowed them just enough. Eli reached the control hub of the ship, the glowing panels and levers that would decide their fate. He glanced back at the children, their small faces set with courage and determination, and whispered, "For Earth, for us." Then he began pressing buttons, pulling levers, and activating the emergency override. Sparks flew. Alarms blared. The ship shuddered violently as its engines began to falter. The aliens screamed, their clicks frantic and harsh, trying to regain control. But Eli had done it. The hive was falling from its intended course, drifting toward the edges of the galaxy instead of carrying them away. The children cheered, even as the ship shook, even as the alarms screamed louder than anything they had ever heard. But victory came at a cost. Debris rained down from the failing ship. Eli was thrown to the floor, metal cutting his arms and bruising his legs. He could barely move, but he looked up at Myra, who crawled toward him through the chaos. "Eli," she cried, her voice trembling. He smiled weakly, reaching for her hand. "I'm here," he whispered. "We did it." The children scrambled into escape pods. Each one jostled violently as they ejected from the ship. Myra and Eli were together, shaking and bruised but alive. The pods drifted through space, back toward Earth, small and fragile against the infinite darkness. They looked back once at the hive, now a shattered, spinning monument to the aliens' arrogance. Eli realized something in that moment. They had done the impossible. They had taken what the aliens thought were helpless children and turned fear into courage, learning into power, hope into action. They were small, yes, but they were unstoppable when they fought together. As the pods moved closer to Earth, the children held each other, crying and laughing at the same time. Myra hugged Eli tightly. "You saved us," she whispered. Eli shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "No," he said softly. "We saved each other, we never gave up." The sky of Earth grew closer, blue and green and alive. Parents waited in towns and cities, tears running down their faces, shouting, crying, embracing their children. Eli and Myra floated down, tired, beaten, but victorious. Eli looked at the horizon and whispered a promise he would never forget. "We will fight, we will survive, and we will never let anyone take us like that again." For the first time since the hive had taken them, Eli felt true relief. The children had escaped. They were home. And humanity had a spark inside them that no alien empire could ever crush. Eli lay in the escape pod, his body bruised and aching. Every muscle screamed, and his arms were cut and bleeding from the fight. The adrenaline that had carried him through the hive was fatting, leaving exhaustion and pain in its place. Myra rested beside him, pale but alive, her small hands gripping his sleeve tightly. He wanted to smile, to celebrate, but a hollow weight pressed on his chest. Victory had a cost. Outside the pod, the wreckage of the hive drifted through space. Sparks flew from broken engines, and pieces of metal tumbled endlessly in the void. Eli knew they had won the battle, but the hive had claimed something no one could replace: innocence, childhood, and the memories of fear that would linger forever. Some of the children were silent, staring at nothing, too shocked to speak. Others cried quietly, holding each other, trying to process what they had survived. Eli thought about the children who had not made it, those who had been caught, injured, or too afraid to fight. He felt a sharp pang of guilt. "We couldn't save everyone," he whispered to Myra, though she didn't reply. She only pressed her face against his shoulder as if to remind him that they had saved enough, that they were still here. And yet, Eli knew he would never forget the others. Their faces, their cries, their fear, all of it would stay with him forever. The escape pods drifted closer to Earth, small points of light in the dark void of space. Eli could see continents, oceans, forests, the world they had thought lost. It looked peaceful from up here, but he knew the truth. Nothing would ever be the same. Earth had changed, and so had they. The children of the hive were no longer just children. They were survivors, warriors, witnesses to horrors no human should endure. Myra looked up at Eli, her eyes wide. Will they take us again?" she asked softly. Eli shook his head, brushing hair from her face. "No," he said firmly. "We are stronger now. We know how to fight. We won't let anyone take us like that again, ever." His voice wavered slightly, but he meant it. The hive had underestimated humans, and they would not make that mistake again. The pods descended through the atmosphere, flames streaking across the sky as they re-entered. Earth smelled like rain and soil, so different from the metallic stench of the hive. The children's parents were waiting, faces streaked with tears, shouting their names, running to catch them. Myra screamed with joy, leaping into her mother's arms. Eli stumbled, weak and battered, but his father grabbed him, lifting him into a tight embrace. The warmth of home, the smell of earth, the safety of family, it was almost too much to bear. But as Eli looked around, he realized the true cost of victory. Some parents did not find their children. Some children were missing, their pods never reaching Earth. Eli felt his chest tighten with sorrow, grief gnawing at his heart. He had saved his sister. He had led the others to safety. But the price had been higher than he could have imagined. Victory was not joy alone. It was sacrifice, loss, and memory. Night fell, and Eli lay in a hospital bed, his body wrapped in bandages. He could hear the distant laughter and cries of children reunited with their families. Myra slept beside him, exhausted but smiling in her dreams. Eli stared at the ceiling, thinking of the hive, the aliens, and the countless hours he had spent fighting, planning, and protecting. He realized something profound. Courage had saved them. Hope had saved them. Humanity had saved them. But courage came with scars, scars in the flesh, scars in the heart. Eli could feel them all. The fear, the pain, the moments when he thought he would lose everyone lingered like shadows. He knew the hive was gone for now, but the memory of it would never leave. He would always remember the sound of alien clicks, the cold metal walls, the eyes of terrified children, and the weight of responsibility that had fallen on his small shoulders. Yet in the darkness, a light burned inside him. The human spirit, fragile but fierce, had triumphed. They had fought against impossible odds and won. They had turned fear into courage, weakness into strength, despair into hope. Eli had led the fight, but he had also learned the truth of humanity. Even the smallest, the weakest, the youngest among us can stand against the darkness and win. As he closed his eyes, Myra's small hand holding his, Eli whispered softly to himself, "We survived, we fought, we lived, and we will never forget." Outside the hospital window, the night sky stretched endlessly, full of stars. And somewhere far above, the wreckage of the hive drifted silently, a reminder that the alien empire had underestimated humanity, and they would never make that mistake again. Eli's heart ached with exhaustion and sorrow, but it also burned with pride. They were home. They were alive. And the human spirit, unbroken and unyielding, had triumphed over the stars. The sun rose over Earth, spilling golden light across cities, forests, and oceans. Birds sang, waves lapped gently at the shore, and the world seemed to breathe again. But for Eli, the sunrise was more than a sign of a new day. It was a symbol of survival, of courage, of humanity itself. He had fought, he had led, he had survived, and now the children of Earth were home. The adults hugged their children tightly, tears flowing freely. Some laughed, some wept, some simply held onto each other, afraid to let go. Eli saw parents searching desperately for the ones who had not returned, and he felt a pang of sorrow. Not every child had survived. Not every parent had been reunited. But those who had returned were living proof of something extraordinary. Humans could endure even when everything seemed lost. Eli sat quietly in a park, Myra beside him, her hand resting in his. The air smelled like rain and flowers, so different from the cold metal of the hive. He watched other children playing, laughing, running freely without fear, and for the first time in months he allowed himself to smile. They had been stolen, tested, and terrified, but they had returned. Humanity had survived. Humanity had fought back. News spread across the globe. Humans shared stories of courage, of children who had faced impossible odds, who had learned, adapted, and an alien empire. Scientists, soldiers, and leaders all marveled at what had happened. The hive had been vast, the aliens strong and merciless, yet they had never accounted for one small truth. Humans do not give up. Humans fight for each other. Humans endure. Eli's story spread quickly. Some called him a hero, a miracle, a child who had changed the course of history. But Eli did not feel like a hero. He felt like a brother who had done what any human would do to protect the people he loved. He had fought for his sister, for the children of Earth, for humanity itself, and in doing so, he had discovered the truth of the human spirit. It was unyielding, unstoppable, and luminous even in the darkest night. In the weeks that followed, humanity began to rebuild. The world had been shaken, but people refused to be broken. Cities were repaired, communities supported one another, and families clung to the belief that hope could survive anything. Children returned to school, but they carried with them lessons far beyond reading and writing, lessons of courage, unity, and the power of the human heart. Eli watched Myra laugh with other children, chasing butterflies through the fields. Her laughter was like music, fragile yet strong, a reminder of everything they had fought for. He realized that survival was not just about life. It was about living fully, about cherishing moments, about finding joy even after terror. And humanity, he thought, would never forget the lesson they had learned. Fear could be faced, evil could be resisted, and even the smallest among them could make a difference. One evening, Eli climbed a hill overlooking the ocean. The stars began to appear, twinkling faintly above the earth. He remembered the night the hive had taken them, the cold metal walls, the clicking of the aliens, the fear that had almost broken him. And he smiled softly with tears in his eyes. They had survived. They had returned. And humanity had remembered something vital. Strength does not always come from size or power. It comes from heart, courage, and unity. The alien empire, far across the galaxy, learned the same lesson. Their reports called humans dangerous anomalies, creatures impossible to control, species whose courage and unpredictability could never be tamed. Eli did not know if they would return, but he did not fear them. Humans had learned to fight. Humans had learned to survive. Humans had learned that the smallest, weakest, or youngest among them could change the stars themselves. Eli looked at Myra asleep beside him and whispered softly, "We will never forget. We will never let fear win. We are human and we are unstoppable." She stirred, smiling in her sleep, trusting him completely. That trust, he realized, was the most powerful weapon they had. Love, hope, courage, these were the tools that no alien could ever destroy. Years later, humanity would tell the story again and again. Children would grow up hearing how one boy, one sister, and the children of Earth had faced an empire of stars and survived. They would learn that bravery was not measured by strength, but by heart. That fear could be conquered. That unity and hope could defeat the impossible. And Eli, older now, would watch the stars with Myra at his side, and he would know that the fight was over, but the lesson would live forever. Humanity remembered. Humanity endured. Humanity thrived. Because humans, no matter how small, no matter how young, could rise against anything. And that was something the universe would never forget.